Hi, everybody. I was able to hear myself with a delay. You know how that's going. So this was a bit of a challenge to actually get the show because I was not aware until the last moment that you actually had to have a TV cable connection to NewsNation. And fortunately, one of our producers was able to stream it to me so I could watch the show. I even took a screenshot of the video indicating the egg-shaped object, and I will show that in a short while. So if you did not see, Ross Coulthart interviewed Jake Barber, it wasn't as detailed as I was expecting. I'm just going to honestly say that. And I won't say that I'm 100% disappointed, but this is one of those things where if you are a hardcore skeptic of the UFO subject, you're going to be able to come away and say, I saw no proof that this was extraterrestrial. What they will say is Jake Barber may very well have seen something highly unusual, something that he was told by a senior member of the UAP task force was non-human intelligence, was extraterrestrial or alien, whatever. So we have that, and that's good. That's interesting for sure. But I'm just saying, if you are a hardcore skeptic, I don't know that this is going to really turn the tables for you. That's my own opinion. Michael or Sean, can one of you show the screenshot of the video just so that we can get a good look at it? Thank you. All right. So this, let me just explain this. If you didn't get to see the video, I'm sure this entire interview will be available on NewsNation's YouTube channel soon. They just didn't show it live here. So this was said to be from, if I heard Ross correctly, this was something that Jake Barber, as a helicopter pilot, did actually carry. You can see it is an egg-shaped object. And as on video, you could tell that this was kind of turning around a little bit. It was a very interesting video, and it's a highly unusual object. But that's really what we have. So this is the object that helicopter pilot Jake Barber stated was, he was convinced non-human intelligence, of non-human origin. So now he said furthermore that he had retrieved at least one other UAP for the government. And it was kind of hard to understand exactly how he described it, an eggthon or an eggon. I couldn't really understand it. I'll be perfectly honest about it. But that this was another object, not necessarily the one we're looking at here, but a second object that he transported, that he was quite convinced was of non-human origin. And he did state that it had a kind of, he had a kind of mental connection to it, a kind of almost telepathic, emotional connection to it. He said he felt a lot of intense emotions. And in fact, when he was describing this to Ross Coulthart, it was kind of interesting. He got very emotional. And I don't think he was faking that. I think this was completely a real feeling as he was reliving it, describing it to Ross. I thought that was quite interesting. By the way, I'm going to take as many of your questions as I can. I'll just go through my notes here first. And Tracy's here with me, and the team is out there, and they'll relay whatever. I'm not going to be able to see your comments. So fast. They're going just way too fast. So I'll do my best. I can say that. A couple of other things, though, that did stand out. First of all, I think Jake Barber himself comes across very well. I think he comes across as totally sincere. I don't think there's any question about that. And there were a few other individuals that Ross Coulthart did interview. One of them was named Don Paul. One of them was named John Blitch. And I think there was one other gentleman who I might have missed. But they were all on camera. They all spoke very highly of Jake Barber. These are all guys with very significant military backgrounds, special operations, and so forth. And there was no question about that. Regarding the egg-shaped object that I just showed the screenshot of a little while ago, he said it was about 20 feet long, he said like a large SUV. It's the object we just looked at, pearly white in color, he said. And he said, Ross asked him, how do you know that it was extraterrestrial? How do you know that it wasn't something that we made? And the fact was, it really wasn't an absolutely certain answer. He just said, look, I've transported a lot of other objects in the past. This was unlike anything else. The level of security involved was extreme, he said. And he said all of the other guys that he was on the mission with felt the exact same way. They were all convinced that this was something completely different. And I assume he meant that they all thought it was alien in some way or another. And then the other thing he just said, and we heard all of this in the clip that was released a few days ago. He just said he was told sometime later by a senior member of the UAP task force. He did not say who that was, but that individual confirmed to him that this was a non-human origin. And that is what we had. And then he mentioned the second object, which did not really have a description that I could pick up. So, except that he had a very deeply emotional connection to it, which he said actually affected him to this day. And he was very, very kind of straightforward about that. A couple of other things I just want to get to here. He talked about a psionic team, and by that he certainly meant PSI, as in psi phenomenon, because he indicated that these were individuals within the military, think remote viewers, but these people had some kind of ESP capabilities. And this was a very interesting statement. He said they were trained to attempt to summon UFOs or UAP mentally. So think, the CE5 initiative is very much what it sounded like to me. Very much so. And according to Jake Barber, it works. He said it absolutely works well. And if you recall, if you read Lou Elizondo's book, Imminent, which came out last summer, there was a passage in that book. First of all, Lou Elizondo also talked a lot about the use of psychics and remote viewers for this type of thing. But he actually did say that at one point over the Atlantic, that they somehow were seeking to lure a UFO or UAP in to catch on video. I don't think Lou mentioned that they were using psychic abilities for that, but for all I know, that might have been part of it, and he just did not enter that into the book. But anyway, there's this psionic team that is within the military, within the classified operations, that is apparently, according to this, charged with somehow connecting with, communicating with, summoning these objects. And a couple of other things. Dr. Gary Nolan was brought on for a few interviews. So Gary Nolan did meet with Jake Barber, and one of the reasons was during one of Jake's transportations of some highly sensitive object, which he was convinced was non-human origin, although, again, there isn't really any proof of this. He said he and everyone on his team got very, very sick, very ill. It did sound a lot like radiation poisoning. He said at one point, like skin was falling off of, I think, his arm or parts of his body. It was very disturbing to him. Gary Nolan, who is an expert in oncology and cancer-related diseases, he's highly, highly expert in this. And I know because I've chatted with him about it, and he is absolutely top of the line. But he looked at Jake's situation and his medical records and was quite convinced that he had been subjected to extreme radiation poisoning. They even brought up a reference to John Burroughs of the U.S. Air Force. John Burroughs, if you follow the history in this, was at the Rendlesham forest back in 1980 for that famous UFO landing. And John Burroughs did indeed suffer from severe medical after effects from that. And I'm glad they pointed out in this special here that John's medical records were not just withheld, but they were fully classified until he was able to get them declassified with the help of then Senator John McCain, who was his senator. So the point is that they're just saying there's a lot of secrecy over the UAP or UFO connection to human health in general. And it looks like this was what happened to Jake Barber as well. But again, like, whereas I didn't have any problem accepting that this could very likely be non-human intelligence. Believe me, I really don't. I mean, first of all, egg-shaped craft have been reported for generations, traditionally in the UFO field. The old 1964 Lonnie Zamora landing case in Socorro, New Mexico, was of an egg-shaped craft. But that's just one example.
Deb Cobble.
That's right. Our friend Deb Cobble, who was written about by Bud Hopkins in the book Intruders, if you found that, under the pseudonym Debbie Jordan. But she also saw an egg-shaped craft. Our friend, my friend Alan Levine, who's the illustrator of my forthcoming book on USOs, Alan himself, in one of the interviews that we did on my channel here, also encountered an egg-shaped craft back in around 1979, 1980-ish. So it's out there. So Jake's description of an egg-shaped craft could absolutely be non-human intelligence. There's no question in my mind that's entirely reasonable for me to think that. But if you are a dedicated skeptic, I'm just going to say this is not going to be a slam dunk from that perspective. That's just my opinion. You were watching this with me, my wife. You probably agree. So a couple of other things, though. I mean, I still think it was very much worthwhile, and I'm glad they did this. So I'm not trying to say it didn't fulfill some hopes, but it's not. I don't think it's the absolute proof that a lot of people were hoping for, that I was kind of hoping for. I'll just say that. One other thing, and before I'll just open it up to your questions. This was very interesting. So he's talking about, this is Jake Barber again, about transporting what he called HVTs, or high value targets. And I was not aware of this, but there's something called Panasonic Tough Books. So probably some of you know about this. These are, I assume, very, very sturdy containers for data, hard drives, things like that. Clearly that are going to be a very high level value of importance. So what he's saying is that after he left the military, he went to work for a private company. He did not give the name of that company. It is entirely possible that I know the name of that company. Another individual forwarded it to me. I'm just going to hold off until I'm sure that I'm right about that. But in any case, he was working for a private company, and they were to retrieve these tough books. And what was bizarre, and this is all new to me, was that they were retrieving these in these remote places like the Sierra Mountains out in, Eastern California. And you have to ask, what the heck are these things doing being dropped or left there? So they had to do that. He said one was dropped into a lake 20 feet under the water. They had to retrieve it there. This is like right out of a movie, right? And what he indicated is that at one point they were retrieving one of these Panasonic Tough Books, and he seemed to indicate that there was some kind of firefight that was involved in the retrieval of that. He said shots were fired. How much, how intense it got, pardon me, they didn't really get into, but he did say he was worried that he was being set up, and he was worried that his employer was trying to kill him. Again, it sounds like a movie script, but this was what he was saying, and he seemed quite sincere about it. I'm not really doubting his sincerity and his truthfulness on this. One of his colleagues named Don Paul also said he was involved in these retrieval teams and that people have lost their lives. I'm just reading my notes here. In this kind of thing, he said. And but Jake believed that his employer was trying to kill him and that there was some kind of shadow war going on over these missing hard drives. Now, are those definitely related to non-human intelligence? That's another question. Like, you, again, if you're really looking at this as a UFO skeptic, you're going to want something a little bit more than what they've given us. Essentially, what Jake Barber said is that it was his strong belief that these were related to UFOs, NHI, aliens, and whatever. And I'm not saying it was not. I'm not saying it wasn't. Who am I to say that I disagree with him? I'm in no position to do that. But I am just saying we're going to need a little bit more than this as testimony to convince someone who's absolutely strongly skeptical. So that is what I would probably say. It was good. I will say that I'm glad we watched it. I'm sure it will be fully available on YouTube at some point soon. I was expecting that it would be live streamed from NewsNation's YouTube channel, and clearly it was not. And I was just lucky that I was able to get a feed to me from my producer. So thank you, Michael. Oh, what I can do is deal with any questions that have come up. Do you have any over there, or?
Yeah, we've got some, and you know, people can put them in now as well, and we'll try to grab some. But
Yeah.
Let's have a little look here.
And if you've got a question that's not directly related to this, but if it's relevant, I'll do my best. I'll do my best to deal with it.
Dust Stinger says, sounds like they were being used as disinfo by CIA agents. Just a comment. A lot of these are comments.
Okay.
UFO World said, do you think these media outlets need to calm down with the hype to manage expectations? This won't move the needle. And you know what? I think that's ultimately the question here. Does this help move the needle, right? And
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, I honestly think it could. This can help move the needle, but we're going to need a little bit more than what they've given. I think it's going to require a little bit more, my own opinion. There was a lot of hype. Look, I mean, if you're in the position of those media companies like NewsNation, this subject has basically made them. This is by far more. I mean, they cover a lot of politics, they cover a lot of other things, but anything that has to do with UFOs or UAP gets like 10 times the views of anything else that they do, pretty much, for the most part. So they love it. It works for them. And you can't 100% blame them for trying to push it. They're trying to make their money. But yes, it's totally true. Like, when you hype this too much, it's going to start making the rest of us a little jaded. No question about it. I will say this. I have total respect for Ross Coulthart. I know him. Tracy and I are friends with him. And I know that he is working very, very hard to bring out really the very best journalism that he can on this subject. And he's done a great job. So this is not a criticism in any way. And in fact, I'm glad he did this. Again, I'm just saying this show is not very likely to convince a diehard skeptic. If someone is kind of on the fence and they want to be open-minded about it and they're willing to listen to these military people, I think it could have some effect for them. But if you are convinced that this is not possible, that, you know, aliens can't possibly be here, it's too far a distance, all of that stuff, I don't know that this is going to do it for you. Any other questions there?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Crypto Kev says, if you had access to Barber, how would you follow up on this information? Which I think is a great question.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to maybe try to reach out to him myself too, and I don't see why I couldn't reach him. My guess is that he probably told Ross many things that he asked not to be put out there. I'm going to guess the name of his employer, which I think that I know, but I don't want to say it. I can't say it ahead of him. That just would not be right. I have to make sure I'm right. How long, like, is there a connection with any of the other 3-letter agencies that he may have had? This is something that I think is very important. Like, one thing I would absolutely want to know is, where does the CIA fit in all of this? If you remember, just a couple of months ago during the congressional hearing, the second congressional UAP hearing, which had Tim Gallaudet, Lou Elizondo, Michael Schellenberger, and Mike Gold, there was one question that was asked by by Representative Burleson. I'm just going to say I helped to contribute this particular question, so I can say that now. But the question that Burleson asked, I wanted him to ask Mike Gold, but he ended up asking Lou Elizondo, was relating to the claim that was by the journalist, Christopher Sharp, who's a friend of ours. And Christopher wrote that about 20 years ago, almost, the OSAP program was attempting to acquire a non-human craft from Lockheed Martin. And on 2 occasions, they nearly got it transferred. We're talking probably 2008-ish or so. And it was blocked both times by a man named Glenn Gaffney of the CIA, a senior CIA executive. And he was able to block it because CIA apparently had, they didn't have possession physically, but they had authority over this craft, CIA. So I just would like to know, where does the CIA fit in with this? And what could Jake Barber tell us about the CIA's connection to this whole scenario? I would bet, I would be shocked if they had no connection whatsoever. That's just my own opinion. You got another one?
Yeah. This is a really good question from
Yeah.
Dolphin and Chips. Hey, Richard, are strong emotional responses often experienced during UFO UAP sightings? And I think that's a really good question.
Yes.
We have a lot of people here who are probably newer to the subject, and a lot of people who are
So they're asking or stating that this is?
No, they're asking.
Is absolutely true.
Yeah, exactly.
So great question. Thank you. Yeah. So here's one thing to keep in mind. I've been looking at UFO cases now for more than 30 years, a long time. And one thing that comes out that is loud and clear, it's shocking when you first start realizing, is the headspace of many of the witnesses when they're in the middle of an encounter. So you'll get either like an extreme kind of fear factor response where people just absolutely freak out. Honestly, maybe that's not so surprising. Like, if you go through your whole life and you don't really think much about UFOs, and then suddenly there's this thing, yeah, you might just spaz out, right? But then there's other types of reactions that make no sense. There's like ultra calm, like you're under control. I've spoken to a number of witnesses directly who've said this. There's absolutely what Tracy and I will often call cognitive manipulation. This goes on so many times. Like, somehow these craft are able to influence the state of mind of the witness. This has come through time and time again. I mean, so frequently that it's almost like a cliche in a sense, but it's not a cliche because it's real. So our emotional disposition can be affected very much by these things. And keep in mind, the U.S. military, even back in the Gulf War of 1990-91, was already using like acoustic weaponry and other types of psychotronic weaponry that was said to be able to affect the emotional state of the Iraqi soldiers that they were fighting. So we've got this technology too. And one can imagine if we have developed this, they, just saying that there's a they, can probably do this as well. So the emotional connection that Jake Barber is feeling, I think, was real. Now, you have to ask yourself, was he being affected this way intentionally in the form of like a weapon, like they were trying to say, let's screw with his emotions? Or was it something beyond that? What he was saying in the show tonight was that he felt this intense like love. In fact, he said it was almost like a divine figure. He actually said it was female in personality in some way. How he was able to tell that, who knows? But he felt an intense feeling of love and connectedness to this thing. So take it for what it is. But is that unusual? No, I don't know if it's the majority of cases that people express this, but it is absolutely not unheard of where people will have these types of emotional reactions. So got another one there?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So everything's moving so fast. Sorry.
Right.
Canny boy. Do you feel like the whole truth about UAPs is going to come out, or are certain parts going to remain secret for much longer?
Yeah, well, that's a really great question, Kenny. I mean, I'll say this. In all of my years studying this, I started this in the early 90s, so more than 30 years. There has never been any period remotely like what we are in now that I've lived through. And then, I've studied the whole history of this going all the way back. And historically speaking as well, there has never been, in my opinion, anything remotely like what we are dealing with, particularly, the era that started in 2017, kicked off with mass media coverage, New York Times, Politico, and all of that. And it just seems to be ramping up and getting faster and faster to the point where I keep likening this to the old expression, the irresistible force against the immovable object, right? The movement for disclosure, if we can call it that, seems like an irresistible force at this point, but we are still facing an immovable object. And how this is going to play out is really difficult. I mean, I've studied this and I struggle with it. I would say that there are many layers of truth to this reality. So layer number one, it's real. There's a UFO, UAP phenomenon that's real, that doesn't come from our civilization. So we're almost at that level now, but it's a level where no one is acknowledging who's behind it. So the government can still play this game of pretend and say, well, we don't know who's behind it or what this represents. We'll get back to you when we learn. That's basically their attitude now. But then there's many other layers of truth. Layer two of truth could very well be, it's real and they are here. Who's the they? Aliens, presumably. Okay, what do they look like? Do they look like little 4-foot tall grays, or do they look like human beings? Or maybe a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. There's a lot going on there. And then you go to the third level. Let's say it's real, they're here. Oh, yes, and we have their technology. Well, how much of that technology will ever be admitted to? How much of it is revolutionary? So imagine you're in the position of those secret keepers, and they've got the most radical revolutionary kind of technology. So free energy. But what if that free energy, what if you realize that free energy can be used to make a weapon that could blow up half of an ocean? So then what do you do about that? Like, do you know that it will be used only for peaceful purposes? And do you trust that no one's going to be, no one's going to be an asshole about it and do something really stupid with it? Like, you might trust yourself, but would you trust your next door neighbor? Would you trust a guy across town? Would you trust someone across the country or someone on the other side of the world? Not necessarily. So my worry is that this is something that may be a concern. I don't know this for a fact, but it's not impossible. So that's a layer of truth that may not come out. Then there's another layer of truth. If there are human-looking beings, which I personally believe they do look that way, it's my own opinion. I can't prove it, but it looks like there's a human-looking contingent to this, but that they're still not from our neck of the woods, so to speak. So if that's the case, what is their deal? Are they, as David Jacobs would say, do they walk among us? And what if that is a truth? I don't know that that's a truth, but if that is a truth, is that something that the secret keepers are just going to tell us? Or how about this? What if there's what if there are a variety of alien bases? I personally believe this. Let's say that there's, 10 alien bases that we know of in the world. maybe they're not all at the bottom of the Atlantic or Pacific Ocean. One of them is like 5 miles from your house. Is that impossible? What if they are, I mean, they got to be living near somebody. And so if we knew that there were locations of an alien base close to somebody's house, that would definitely be cause for maybe not giving up that information. So I guess what I'm saying is disclosure can come in any variety of levels. And those levels of truth, I didn't even get to all of them. They don't get to, like, if there's an agenda, do we know of one or multiple alien agendas? If we can determine what they are, do we know what they are? And is it something that they want to tell the world about? Again, I don't know. And then the last thing I'll say on this is, for as far as secrecy goes, I don't think there's any question about the truth of what David Grush said a year and a half ago. I believe this for a long time, which is that there is a kind of secret Cold War or secret arms race dealing with this type of technology. It's been my own opinion for a long time that this is so, and that was something that he did say. And if that is so, there's another reason for nation states to be as tight-lipped about what they know relating to this technology as possible. So we're dealing with a lot of factors here. That was a long-winded answer, but I hope that was okay. Okay, my wife.
Okay, we're going to talk about whistleblowers for a second, and then we're going to talk about NHI. So this one first is from Nebraska, because I'm starting to get whistleblower fatigue. What information short of full disclosure would move the needle?
Well, I would say don't get whistleblower fatigue just yet. These people are coming out, and the fact is they are nervous, and I think they have things to be nervous about. So there's a lot of talk below the surface level, that I am hearing from other researchers and other people who are plugged in, that these whistleblowers are genuinely concerned for their safety and their lives. So I would just, emphasize that point. I do understand the point about whistleblower fatigue. In a sense, my dad was a New York City cop. He always said talk is cheap. And it's true. It's easy to talk up a good game. And at a certain point, we need more than that. What was the other part of that question, though?
Oh, sorry. I'm just looking at
whistleblower fatigue.
What information short of full disclosure would move the needle? What do you think?
Well, what we need to do, like, for example, the Immaculate Constellation document was released a couple of months ago to Congress. Some people were very nonplussed, very unimpressed by it. I was impressed by it, and I think it's potentially of great value. But what we need is these things come out, and we need follow-up investigative journalism to go to the source, to do everything possible to support or disprove the validity of these claims. So in the case of someone like Jake Barber, keep in mind, this is just the beginning, it seems to me, of what he has to say, not the end. This isn't, I would be really surprised if this is the last that we hear of him. So think of it as like an opening volley. I don't think that we're going to be done here. We do need more information. I think we want it to be more specific. But I don't doubt that will happen. I do agree that, we don't have it yet. I mean, the thing to keep in mind is this reality is so vast. It is so profound. It is so transformative. We have to keep in mind just how big this is and how many feathers it's going to ruffle once it is out and confirmed. There is a tremendous amount of resistance to all of this type of information coming out. And I might as well just make the point here. A lot of folks for the last 7+ years now have been saying that all the information that's come out is part of a government disinformation campaign, because there are a lot of people out there, they don't even believe that UFOs are real. So their attitude is any of this UFO data coming out from the government is simply a psyop, it's blue beam, it's whatever. And I don't believe that. I think what we are seeing is the result of a genuine power struggle behind the scenes. There have always been factions relating to the UFO subject. It's always been the case. Go back to the 1940s and 50s, right on through today. It has not changed in that regard. The people have changed, but not the factions themselves. And I think what happened starting in 2017 was very simply that enough critical mass developed from our society, from the internet, from researchers and people talking and sharing information. And I think what we got was a critical mass that was sufficient in 2017 to enable journalists like Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal of the New York Times to write a couple of articles and to get that out there against a lot of opposition, by the way, from the New York Times leadership. So they were able to get this done, and that started really a battle that we are still seeing play out now. So there are still very, very strong anti-disclosure elements within the government structure. Almost the entire Pentagon structure is like this. The whole Pentagon Public Relations desk, clearly. I would say most of what we've come to call the deep state, what I've often called the national security state, is still opposed to this. They have most of the mainstream media, in my opinion, still working for them. But there are other groups and factions now, including a lot on the web, and a lot of like NewsNation they've got good people. They've got Ross Coulthart. So I think we're looking at a kind of a battle that's happening, but this is not an easy battle to win. There's a lot going on here. So I don't think that I'm not expecting a short struggle for this. I wrote a book 15 years ago called After Disclosure. I had a great co-author. We thought it out. We tried to act like a think tank, and we both made a very singular mistake, which was I definitely thought that disclosure would happen like an avalanche. Now, maybe it still can, but it hasn't yet. And it's been 7 years since we've had open conversations about this subject. And what we can see instead is that there is a tremendous amount of pushback from the establishment on this. And so how long can that last? It might last for a while. You know, we got a new president being sworn in a couple of days. We know for a fact that his son is into the subject. There's no question Donald Trump Jr. is into this. There's no question that Trump himself, I mean, he did the Lex Fridman podcast, he did Rogan, and he talked a little bit about this subject and said more, in fact, than former President Jimmy Carter said when he was a candidate back in the 70s, when Carter got so much attention for this. Trump actually has said more than that. So it's entirely possible that he might say something that would help move this forward. I would probably be surprised if he did, but maybe not necessarily completely shocked either. It's not out of the question. So there are things that can happen that can move this conversation forward. I have a feeling, though, that we're not going to see the breakthrough. I made this prediction last year that 2024 was not going to see disclosure, and a couple of folks were a little bit disappointed that I said such a thing, but it was my own opinion that it just wasn't going to happen. And of course, we know the story. Got another one there.
Yeah. This is from Wayne Burrell. When Jake talked about his connection with NHI, it almost sounded like a religious experience.
Yeah.
Do you think this is what Jacques Vallée is talking about? Or was talking about?
Probably in part, you know, I mean, Jacques Vallée said many, many things on this subject over the years, but let's go back to the fact that what Jake Barber talked about sounded like a religious experience. It really did. I think that's right. He got very emotional when he spoke to Ross about this. And we've all been in this position where you're talking about something and you just don't expect that emotion to well up inside you. It catches you off guard, right? I've been there. We've all been there. And I think that's exactly what happened to Jake Barber. This was completely unrehearsed, completely real. He starts talking about this experience, and that feeling just came right up, and he got really choked up. It was clearly a deeply mystical to him experience that I think he said, like, it still is with me. In fact, he said, I feel like they guide me to this day, is one thing he said about that. They protect me, he said. They guide me through all of the difficulties that I'm having currently. It was quite amazing, quite impressive. So, yeah, I think, Jacques Vallée probably would have a lot to say about this as well, and maybe he will. You have another one there?
Well, there's a lot of people who have been asking about psionics. They want to talk more about psionics. Yeah. Let's see. KF Tunes. Have you ever seen psionics come up as a topic in your UAP research?
Yeah, good question. No, not that phrase. I've not. The phrase psionics, I think, is new to me. I don't recall having heard that.
Not, but the phrase is.
Yeah, the topic is old. The topic is, we talk about this a lot. Look, for someone who's new to this, you got to recognize, or at least understand, that the U.S. government, the U.S. military, Russian military, probably the Chinese military, for all I know, definitely the U.S. and Russians have actively and successfully used psychics for all types of missions. I was lucky to do a couple of YouTube shows with one group led by the gentleman named Daz Smith. He's got a YouTube channel out there. They call it the Hellfire Club, I believe.
Yeah.
These remote viewers are amazing. They are truly astonishing. Go check out some of those videos. It works. It works. I mean, I don't know what else to say about it. There's something to this. There's something about the quality, in my opinion, I believe this very strongly, of the human mind to be able to perceive and reach out things that are beyond our body. And that says a lot about, what we are. That says a lot about what the nature of reality happens to be. And, you can go through your life and say, I don't believe that. Well, all right, be my guest. But that's not going to make it go away. It's a fascinating and real subject. And in my opinion, it's absolutely exciting. It's like, why would we want to go through our lives and shut our mind off to this astonishing knowledge about the fabric of our universe, the fabric of our reality, the fact that human beings are able to do such a thing, in my opinion, clearly would make, especially those people who are good at this, if I were a super intelligent telepathic alien looking down at the little human beings, I would probably be interested in those people more than the average. So I think it's a real thing, and that the military clearly knows that there's value in it. And you study the history of remote viewing a little bit, you can see that it's not a joke; it's a real thing. I've been lucky to get to talk to some of these remarkable remote viewers. These are truly amazing people. So, any other questions? I can scroll here. Someone says, you are the only one expecting it on YouTube. They know of a ton of people following Ross are only on YouTube. Makes me want to stop watching their stuff. But I like Ross and the topic, obviously. Yeah, I get it. I feel the same way. And I could have reached out and asked Ross myself, but I didn't bother to do that. I just assumed it would be on NewsNation. I was totally wrong.
Here, I want to just mention something that Kristen Corby said.
Yeah.
She said, it did sound spiritual, talking about Jake's experience. I have to hand it for Ross for being absolutely unafraid to consider the spiritual angle. And I just want to add to that. Yeah, like, I've got to hand it to Ross for really going out on a limb with psionics and the spiritual angle and all of this.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just give him some props here. And the guys that did come forward still, I mean, people aren't satisfied that we had enough context. There definitely wasn't enough detail, right?
Right.
But I don't know. I still feel like we're putting more out there. It's opening more discussions, and that was worth something.
I agree. I think, like as I said before, this is not enough that's going to convince a dedicated skeptic to say, oh, wow, I changed my mind. Like, they're not going to do that probably from this. But I do think, I mean, I like to use the criterion like a reasonable argument. And I think that what Jake Barber provided was a reasonable case that we should take what he says seriously, that this was non-human intelligence. I do take it seriously, very seriously, that he said a senior member of the UAP task force told him, apparently quite authoritatively, that egg-shaped object he transported was non-human intelligence in origin. It's not proof, but it's certainly something that I don't think we should dismiss. And the rest of what that question was about, I think, is right on. Like, there were a lot of really brave things that came out here. You know, if Ross really wanted to be ultra conservative and tepid, he could have kept all of the psychic stuff out, and we would know that much less about this. But I'm glad that he put it in there. I'm glad that we got to see Jake Barber's emotional reaction to his experience as well. That makes it real. That makes it human. That makes it something I think that we can all relate to. So I was glad to see all of that. Someone asked me to talk about, I think I saw a question about Jason Sands. Sands. Someone, Saturn Inc. says, Richard, can you please respond to the 3H interview with Jason Sands, where actual clear evidence was presented in explicit, incredible detail? I only listened to Jason Sands in the recent James Fox documentary, which I can't keep the name of documentaries in order anymore. The program. Thank you. So that one just came out like a month or two ago, and Jason Sands was introduced to me through that. I found him very believable, very impressive. Some people I know are trying to attack his credibility. I'm aware of this. In my own back channel way, I've heard much stronger support for his story, so I'm inclined to believe him. He did state that back in the early 1990s, he was out in the Nevada test range area there. This is the area where, if you recall, the footage was leaked out to the TV show Hard Copy of a craft that was maneuvering in a lot of like really incredible ways. It's been studied, analyzed in great detail. So a couple of days after the recording of that video, apparently Jason Sands was out there and with his team, and they saw what looked like a guy and a landed craft of some sort out on the flat desert plains there. And he's thinking, this guy's in trouble. Let's see what the deal is. And he goes to talk to the guy, and he describes him as essentially bluish white skin. He said he looked really unhealthy. But then he looked at him more carefully and said, I don't see any ears on this guy. His eyes were larger than ours and dark. And he's like, okay, he's either some kind of mutant or he's an alien. And it was a very strange encounter that he had with this being. I don't know if that's the interview that you're talking about, Saturn Inc. So if there's something else, then it's shame on me that I'm not aware of it. I'll have to get up to speed on it. But at least provisionally at this time, I think that we should take what Jason Sands says seriously. I'm not saying absolutely let's all sign on and say he's 100% it's true. But I think when I look at cases like this, I will provisionally tell myself, I think this can be true. Like, that's where I would be on something like that. So it's someone like Jason Sands, I will say provisionally, I think that can be true. I'm not at all willing to dismiss what he has to say, unlike some people who I think are trying to dismiss him.
I just want to add this from Monster Hunter Player 2. He just added this. Jason Sands was not a single eyewitness account. There were several corroborating witnesses confirming his experience. He wasn't alone when it happened.
That's right. Yeah, there were other people with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So, I mean, these people are in a tough position. I remember, we all remember a year and a half ago when David Grush came out, made that huge splash. It's all we were talking about. And when I heard him on the initial interview that he did with Ross, and then he was also interviewed by Leslie Kane and Ralph Blumenthal, I was kind of blown away. I mean, I just thought this is incredible information. And yet, why should I be surprised? In the subsequent weeks, there were people all over the place that were just trying to take him down and say, he's not telling us anything new. I'm like, what? Are you asleep? This is a lot that's very important. But there are some people who I think are just never, ever going to be persuaded. No matter how much information is thrown at them, they will just continue to shake their head. I think that just, there are folks that are like that.
I just want to ask this. I lost the person who was asking it. He said, is there a link to the live stream? And I think none of us know at this point.
To the NewsNation show?
Yeah, if it's actually going to be available to everybody who wasn't able to see it on cable TV. And I don't think we know the answer to that.
We don't. We have to assume it will be available. I cannot believe that NewsNation would just withhold that from YouTube indefinitely. I don't have an in on that. But I've got to think.
What was weird too is
they played it up so much. They're gonna have to. You're gonna have to put it out there.
It felt like it was kind of truncated as well. Like there were parts, like big parts missing from it.
I don't know. I mean, there were a lot of commercials, but you have it on their feed, and it was almost like a coast to coast thing. Where there's like commercials every 10 minutes, and it's like 5 minutes of commercials, 10 minutes of programming. Maybe not quite that bad, but it was very heavily commercialed, with interruptions and all that. The whole thing went for an hour, but that's with the commercials. It was probably 45 minutes, 40 to 45 minutes, I'm guessing. So I wanted it to be a little longer. I have to admit, I was hoping for something that would have no commercials and that would be even more than an hour. But again, I don't want to sound like I'm ungrateful. I'm glad that they did it. And I'm glad that we got to see more of Jake Barber. So you got something else there.
I don't know if you know what this means. I'm going to assume that you do. From Phil Bonobo Apes. Richard, is Leonard Stringfield's omnibus worth €70? Do you know what that is? Do you know what he's talking about?
No, I don't know what that is. You're gonna have to tell me.
Sorry, Phil. We don't.
I'm a big Stringfield fan. I have all of his reports bound up. You can buy on Amazon. His omnibus.
That the report?
Yeah. Answer: yes, it is absolutely worth that. I spent over $100 for my version, and I didn't want to spend $100. So yes, on I assume Amazon or maybe somewhere else, you can buy the full, complete 7 status reports by Leonard Stringfield. So Leonard Stringfield, if you're not aware, was the great crash retrieval researcher from the 1970s, 1980s, and he died in 1994. He interviewed probably around 100 people, possibly more, who either had direct or maybe through like their deceased spouse, some kind of connection to crashed UFOs or alien bodies or things like this. And Stringfield, he had been in the Air Force himself during World War II. He lived near U.S. Air Force headquarters. Very close to. It looks like I'm frozen here. All right, looks like I'm still on. Tracy's going to check to see if I'm still online. I think I'm online. That's some kind of crazy stuff happened just now. So I'll talk about Stringfield. He collected about 100 accounts of crash retrievals or alien bodies or this type of thing. And his work is extraordinary. In my opinion, it's inspirational and I would say foundational. So yes, I would say it's worth it. And €70 is cheap compared with what I paid. So hopefully you guys can hear me.
Can everyone hear? Can you guys hear?
I mean, the chat still going. Okay, yes, they're saying I'm still here.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, so get the Stringfield book. It's and he's a good writer, and he was a careful researcher, and you cannot find that information practically anywhere else. And by the way, I'll just give a shout out to my friend and colleague, Michael Schratt. Michael is a real expert on Stringfield as well, and has on his channel, which you can find on YouTube, done a lot of Stringfield conversations and lectures as well. So he and I are two big Leonard Stringfield fans. We're out there. You have any others?
Okay. Straight Talk Studio. I think a lot of us have heard about this and wondered about this. Ross mentioned a while back that he knew where a UFO was buried that was so large they built a building over it. Any guess where that may be?
No. I mean, I'm guessing I thought I heard a hint.
Australia.
I heard it was in California, or at least I thought. So I don't know. I don't think anybody really knows. It's a really good question. It is true that this is a strong rumor that an acquired craft was so large that it was impossible to move. And that as a result of that, they had to build a large structure around it. And there was further talk about a year ago that when the UAP Disclosure Act was written, sponsored by Chuck Schumer, they had the whole eminent domain clause in there by which they were going to just take anything being held by a private contractor. The terror apparently was that whatever corporation had control over this craft that was too large to move, like they did not know what they were going to do about this. They didn't know how to move it out so that it couldn't be found. They're kind of stuck with it there. And there's also talk, again, behind the scenes, but I think it could be true. And this relates to Christopher Sharp's article about Lockheed and the OSAP program, that some of these private firms may not want to hold on to some of this UAP tech any longer, that they may feel it is a liability for them more than a benefit. Just possibility there. I'm looking at one question here. So N8 writes, Richard won't mention Dr. Stephen Greer. Happy to mention Dr. Stephen Greer, but you got to ask me a decent question about him. Now, the big thing that, of course, has gotten Stephen Greer attention lately, it seems to me, is he's been making some very strong predictions about disclosure. And in fact, like right around now. So the question is, are any of these people that have been interviewed by NewsNation connected to Stephen Greer? Is that what he's talking about? And I don't have an answer to that. I don't know the answer to that. I could speculate that it is possible, but I really don't know. And so it's hard for me. Like, I'm not going to mention Stephen Greer if there's no specific thing for me to talk about here. He's made some claims that we're looking at a disclosure. I think it's great to make predictions based on extrapolating from current events. I like to do that myself. To make predictions, though, based on my supposed secret knowledge that only I know, that you have to trust me, no, I don't like to do that. I don't think that's fair to do to the public. Lots of people make predictions. They never come true. They never come true. They never come true. So I don't really want to do that to you. And the other thing is, like, when someone makes predictions like that or says, I have access to secret knowledge that you don't have, so trust me, what that implicitly does is it puts that person on some kind of pedestal above you. And that's never a proper place for a true researcher to be. A true researcher, in my opinion, is someone who says, look, I'm exactly like you. I'm no different from you. Here's my work. Here are my citations. Here are my footnotes. You can check them. And in theory, you could do exactly what I did, but I just did the work here and I'm showing you my work. Go check it. We're on the same level. And I've always felt that is the proper approach, that any public figure, really, whether they're a researcher or a spokesperson, whatever, you should always be in that. You should never be trying to put yourself above by saying, I've got secret knowledge. I have this special sauce that only I have access to, and you just have to trust me. No, I don't like to play that. And I don't think that we are helped when we do get this type of thing happening. And look, it could very well be that Stephen Greer has got genuine information here. And I would like for him to be right, incidentally. I would prefer that he's got people that are going to come out with a massive, powerful disclosure. Why not? Why not? That would be fantastic. And I would be the first to congratulate him if this ends up happening. So I don't know if it's the same people, if it's different people, or what. So we'll just have to see. And if nothing happens as a result, then, it'll be like the Ascension 2012. Remember that? And the ride we were all taking for that. We're going to ascend. You just have to have 51% positive karma, remember, and then the universe will flip a switch and you too can ascend. Yeah, right. Okay, great. So that was a big waste of our time. And those people who did that, by the way, should hide their heads in shame and should be embarrassed for the rest of all time. Okay.
This is another one from Monster Player 2. The video, no matter how boring it looks, corroborates the UAP task force investigations confirming NHI crash retrievals are real.
They're talking about the video from tonight.
Yeah.
Well, it corroborates, it supports it. It's just another brick in the wall. I agree. I think, look, this was not a trivial event. It was not a trivial production that Ross did with Jake Barber and a few other people. Think about how crazy this is. We are in an era now where, like in this last year, I did a video on this a couple of weeks ago, like one of the big missing stories of 2024 was that we had 3 individuals last year who made significant statements about the existence of acquired alien tech. We had David Grush, who it leaked out. He did that event in New York City probably about a year ago, where he's talking to these Wall Street money managers and all of these people. And he's talking about a craft that was 40 feet wide on the outside, but inside as big as a football field. That sounds crazy. However, that is not the first time, if you go into the research, that you might encounter something like that. There are some strange things, or at least strange claims over the years that have been made about these craft. So that's Grush. Now, Grush had very high, significant security clearances. This is not just something that you can just dismiss casually with the wave of a hand. And then you had the thing that Christopher Mellon leaked out last August. It was a signal chat that he had from an unnamed individual, high level though, who confirmed to him, and Mellon put this out there, the reality of the 1953 Kingman UFO retrieval. That was an event that researchers have looked at for many, many years. We've believed it is true. I have believed it's true. There's pretty good research that was done on it by Ray Fowler, who's still with us, and the late Harry Drew, who's not. And here's this person confirming to Chris Mellon that was real, and quite a bit more about the reality of a UFO UAP retrieval program. So there's that. And then we had, who was it? Oh, Lou Elizondo, also making some, I think, pretty powerful statements, both in his book Imminent as well as to Congress under oath about the reality of UAP retrieval programs, and the fact that Elizondo confirmed to Representative Burleson that, yes, the CIA did twice stop the transfer of alien tech to the OSAP program from Lockheed. Those are 3 powerful statements from people all who had senior positions within the Department of Defense. So, you get these statements out there, and you really have only one of 2 options, it seems to me. You can say, well, they're all doing disinformation, they're all lying. Well, I don't think that's the case. I don't think any of them are lying. I think they're all telling the truth. And that's the other option, is to believe them and then to recognize, all right, so what's going on here? Never in the history of this phenomenon have we had 3 individuals of that stature in the course of 1 year to make such potent statements on the reality of acquisition of alien tech. I don't think we've ever had anything like that. So we're in a place where there are some seriously important bombshells being dropped, and it seems like they're happening more and more frequently now. The thing that I keep wondering about, someone on my website, I've got a great website, go check it out, Richard Nolan members. Some of you, I'm sure, are members. So someone asked me today on the site, do I ever compare the UFO cover-up to the JFK assassination? And the fact is I do frequently. And one thing that I would point out here that's relevant is, we are now 61 years after the assassination of John F. Kennedy. 61 years. And I would say that pretty much everyone who's looked into it will say, yeah, he was killed in a conspiracy, the full truth of which has never been officially acknowledged. I don't really think many people doubt this any longer, unless you really live with your head, in the sand. And yet, officially speaking, does it really matter? I mean, there's been no justice. Not only that was Kennedy murdered, but all the people associated with murder. Lee Harvey Oswald, Jack Ruby, Dorothy Kilgallen, Mary Pinsent Meyer, and many, many, many other people associated directly or indirectly with the Kennedy assassination were murdered in the immediate aftermath. So those people killed the president, they killed a whole bunch of people after, and none of them were brought to justice, not one. Not only that, but we have never had an official recognition of just how significant that coup d'etat was in American and world history. That was a major event. And we have not, to this day, 60 plus years later, had an official recognition of that. We all kind of know. And even in mainstream media, they'll talk about it. Well, there's a lot of reason to think there was something going on there, but that's all you get. And so, in a sense, we're in this weird place with the Kennedy assassination where we all know kind of, sort of what happened. He was killed, and probably by our side, like CIA and the like. Yes, maybe LBJ had a hand in that. But there's no justice and there's no official recognition. And now you look at UFOs or UAP and you ask yourself, how much truth can come out? How much truth can come out and still we get no recognition from a system of government that, let's be honest here, it's not a democracy. You hear everyone talking about, we got to preserve our democracy. Are you kidding me? What are you smoking, man? This is not a democracy. We don't have a good name for what this global system of power is, but it ain't democracy. It's something else. Oligarchy, yeah. Financial oligarchy, yeah. Media oligarchy. We really need, our political science is woefully out of date. We do not have a proper understanding of our society. And so therefore, what I'm saying is we may very well, like the public will have full truth on UFOs, UAP, okay, or enough truth, but will it matter? There's a question. And even Congress. I don't really doubt that there are members of Congress right now who actually do give a damn about this. I think they care. I think Burchett definitely cares. I think Nancy Mace cares. I think Anna Paulina Luna cares. I think Burleson cares. I think a bunch of others do care. I think they really do. But you have to ask yourself, how much power do they actually have? They're members of Congress. They're not even in the Senate. And so can they make it happen the way we want them to make it happen? And I don't even know if they believe that they can. I think they want to, but I get the idea. You listen to some of these people talk, like James Fox interviewed Burchett on his recent documentary, which was a really excellent job. And Burchett's talking. He's like, yeah, we all know what the score is. I don't think he has any illusions about what he's dealing with here. So I think the connection with JFK is very significant. And we should not forget it, because it's a lesson of history where we have the truth and it's almost it's almost irrelevant that we know the truth because we are not getting justice out of that truth. And that may be the case with UFOs for some time to come. More and more information may come out, but without an official acknowledgement, what are we doing here? We're just going to keep doing the same thing, spinning our wheels over and over again. What's crazy? You got another question for me, I hope.
I do.
But I just got to say this, like, so I started hanging out in the UFO community around 2001, 2002, meeting people, going to conferences. I hung out with Stanton Friedman and Timothy Good and Linda Moulton Howe and all these other great people. Jim Mars, when he was alive, one of my favorites. I love Jim Mars. And we would talk about, won't it be great if we can just get a breakthrough? Someone on the inside coming forth as a whistleblower, telling the truth. We all thought about this. We all wanted it to happen. And I will fully admit, my assumption, probably theirs as well, was if you got a powerful whistleblower to come forward to tell a powerful truth, that would just rock everyone's world and it would cause a kind of landslide disclosure. And what we are seeing is that is not what's happening. That's not our world. And that's what we really have to come to terms with. It's like you have one truth bomb, another truth bomb, another truth bomb. You think, well, this has got to do it. And yet here we are. And we're moving a little bit. It's true. But I guess I don't want to sound like we're completely like hopeless here. I really do believe in the value of persistence. I'll say this, and Tracy can vouch for this. There have been many times in my life where I've been in a tight spot and I'd have like a 1% chance of success. And it's like, you're laughing. And it's like, you got to make this thing happen. And the fact is, you can. You have a 1% chance of success, but you're only going to succeed if you are totally focused. You've got an actual game plan and you work your ass off to get that thing done and you let nothing stop. And then you actually can achieve that 1%. And so disclosure is a little bit like that. Like disclosure can happen, but we have got to be persistent. We have got to stay on the subject. That is, you focus on the evidence as much as you can, as well as you can, and you just keep bringing it forward. Just keep bringing it forward. And it may seem like it's never going to make a difference. You know, we're just doing the same thing over and over again. And maybe that will happen for a while yet, because we cannot underestimate the forces that do not want this to happen. However, you know, one thing about life is that change is inevitable. It's always going to happen. And it won't be the kind of change probably that we can predict, but it will happen. And so I think there will be a day when the truth of this subject is out much more in the open. Whether it's the full truth, maybe not. I don't know. But more than what we have. And I think I'll take whatever win we can take, because this is not an easy subject to get the kind of recognition that it requires, because it's so big, it's so transformative, it's the most humongous of subjects that I can think of. The acknowledgement that there are other high-level intelligences that are operating on this planet that are beyond us, and that, I'm just going to say this, probably would be intimidating to be hanging out in a room with. Now, you have people saying, oh yeah, we want to have open relations with these wonderful aliens. Well, okay, if they're all like beautiful, divine, feminine goddess figures like what Jake Barber encountered, great, okay, fine. But I don't know that they're all like that. And I suspect that we are subject of a lot of attention right now because of what we're doing as a civilization. Think about in the space of 4 or 5 generations. 5, 6 generations ago, most people there weren't any automobiles. People were still using horses to get around. And then from that until now, it's just been a couple of generations. We're transforming so rapidly. I have to believe and there's a bunch of theys out there, are checking us out right now because they can see what is happening. My opinion. Yeah. You have something else there?
Yeah, but I was just laughing. MJ Carr, I see you, but Richard has not done the Gateway Experience. I could talk about it all day. MJ Carr's question, we might have to come to this maybe in another show. What are your thoughts on the Gateway Experience with respect to NHI?
Do I need to drop acid for this? What do I need to do for the
Gateway
Gateway?
Experience?
Oh, that's
is
for
at
Monroe
Monroe
Institute?
Institute. Yes. Which,
okay, yeah.
Which I've been a part of, and
Got it.
there's lots there, but I don't think Richard hasn't experienced it.
No LSD involved.
It's a big topic.
Yeah.
We would have to sort of really crack that one open because I love talking about it. It's a really cool experience that people go to at the Monroe Institute that is a week long, and they go there to achieve altered states of mind. And it's different for every person. They use audio technology that synchronizes the two hemispheres of the brain, and it works very well. And people have all sorts of experiences, including NHI.
Yeah.
But I don't know what specifically you're looking for, but I don't want to hijack this. So
No, I'm glad you mentioned that.
I'm just going to say hi to everybody, by the way. Hi, everyone. Great to see you all. The chat is going so fast. I'm so sorry I can't keep up with everyone and all the super chats and everything.
Yeah,
but you guys are amazing, and we're always so happy you're here supporting. So just thanking you and just saying hi for a sec.
Thank you, Miss Beautiful. Yeah, and the Gateway, look, I mean, there may come a day when I just say, the hell with it. I'm going to do my ayahuasca journey. I'm going to go float in a tank for a little while, do the Gateway, do the hemisphinx, and just trip out to Mars or something. I may do that, but I haven't done that yet.
The thing about the Gateway Experience is it's a non-narcotic way to experience altered states of consciousness.
Very good.
Yeah. So
honestly,
people who don't want to do ayahuasca and acid and all of that, that's a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm actually open to trying something like that. It just hasn't happened yet. One day probably will. Hopefully I've still got some years ahead of me where I can do that. So there you go.
Okay.
So
let's see here. Doug S. and Vixen. So Doug S. said, if many or all of the NHI have telepathic powers, is it likely they are controlling the disclosure narrative and timeline? And I'm just going to add to that Vixen's question: if they have access to tools of mind control, do we even have a chance? Just your thoughts about mind control and their control over this situation.
Look, it's not impossible, but of course, the problem that we have is how do we garner evidence for such a scenario? How do we get proof for such a scenario? We all know, right? This is difficult to do. Is it possible? Look, infiltration, possible. Maybe even likely. I mean, think of it from their point of view. If you were a highly intelligent, sophisticated, advanced alien group, and you're watching humanity go through its insane progression that we have gone through, especially in the last 2 centuries, you're going to be looking at them and you're going to think, these humans don't know when to stop, do they? They keep pushing. They keep pushing. And you're going to be interested in them. And you're going to be concerned. They're constantly at war. And I'm not here to dunk on humanity. We're assertive. We're aggressive. It's one of the reasons, our aggression, that we have the technology we do. Let's be real about it. The hyper competitive, aggressive nature of humanity is, in fact, a very successful evolutionary strategy. Collective violence and warfare is an evolutionary strategy that has worked for the human race. That's an unfortunate reality that we experience. So others are going to be looking at us thinking they're pretty aggressive, they're pretty assertive and violent, and they are now developing, digital communications, nuclear weapons, of course, delivery systems that are becoming ever more sophisticated, strong artificial intelligence now, nanotech, quantum computing, you name it, fill in the blank, all like that. So just theoretically, an alien race is going to be interested in that, and they may be thinking, it's totally hypothetical, of course, I don't know this is true, but they could easily think, we should guide them, we should manage that process, we should quietly control it the way we feel it should be controlled, so that they're maybe they don't destroy themselves, or that they do destroy themselves, either way, or that they're not going to be a hassle or a nuisance for us. Like, there's all kinds of possibilities there. So mind control, is that possible? Yes, it is possible when you think of the effects that they seem to have on our own cognitive capabilities and our emotions, which we've talked about. So if they can do that, can they do more? Well, in abduction research, if you choose to accept that, there are many such accounts. People love to either love or hate the research of David Jacobs. For my part, I have a lot of respect for what David did. And, you know, he believed through the abductees that he regressed that, at least in many of their cases, they dealt with human-looking handlers that were not quite human, that had very powerful telepathic capabilities, to the point where they could control someone's thoughts without that person realizing. Is this true? Well, I mean, until I meet one of these people, I'm not going to know. But is it impossible that there's a covert manipulation of our species going on, that they are managing and we're not? Yes, of course it's possible. We've got this idea that we're in control. Like, our decisions matter. Like, you know, I support this policy, not that policy, so we should do this thing, not that thing. And like, as if we really are able to control much at all. I mean, look around you. I don't think we're in control of very much. It doesn't seem to me. And I think that we overvalue our own ability to affect our destiny. I'm not really so sure at this point in my life that we're as capable as we like to think we are. That's just me. So is it possible that we're manipulated? Yeah, of course it's possible. I don't know that that's the case. And so, you know, the late Stanton Friedman used to talk about the gray basket. I don't know if it's true. I don't know if it's false. I'll put it in the gray basket. So that's one of those gray basket things.
Okay, comment from Monster Hunter Player 2 again. The HD video, radar, and satellite footage of NHI exists already. The problem is our president and Congress do not have access to them from the aerospace corporations.
I believe that.
Yeah.
I believe that's right. You know, a few years ago, that's a great question. Thank you. Who was that? Who said that?
Monster Hunter Player 2.
Monster Hunter Player 2. You know, five years ago, the Davis Wilson notes leaked out. A lot of you remember this, and I threw myself right at the forefront of that, because the fact was I was shown those documents, at least 3 pages of them, back in 2006. And I talked about it starting in 2007. I'm on the record talking about not the notes per se, but the knowledge in those notes. I actually was very explicit about it. I was trying to protect my source. But anyway, the notes came out in 2019, and some people foolishly, I'll just say, said, nope, it's fake, they're a script, nonsense. Well, they have now been supported by everybody, from Valet to Eric Davis himself and lots of other people. It's real. So Eric Davis met with retired Admiral Thomas R. Wilson in 2002 to talk about Wilson's failed attempt. And by the way, this was all triggered by a meeting with Dr. Stephen Greer back in 97, his failed attempt to gain access to a reverse engineering program of alien tech. And Wilson at the time in 97 was Deputy Director of Intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He was a significant player. And he felt, whether rightly or wrongly, that he should have been assigned to oversee this program. It was a special access program run by a private contractor. And we still actually don't have official confirmation. A lot of betting money says Lockheed Martin, very possibly, but whoever. Wilson meets with the program managers and the security personnel and the corporate attorney of the program. And they said, yeah, this is real. We're trying to reverse engineer an alien craft. We're having not that much success. And he said, you need to let me in. They're like, nope, we're not going to let you in. He said, I'll complain up the chain of command. They say, go right ahead. We're not afraid of you. Complain all you want. He did complain, and he was just threatened with his career. And that is a private contractor that exists within the protection of the United States classified system, where your tax dollars, if you're an American citizen, and mine, support this. And they go to this private contractor, whoever they are, and they make their money, and they get to do their free research, courtesy of our tax dollars, to study this technology and presumably make money-making opportunities out of it and gain all kinds of power that I can't even imagine as a result of this. And that is our system. Now, again, we need a name for this kind of a system. We do not have a proper definition of how this system works. It's essentially a publicly funded government providing cover for private contractors because they're better at maintaining security, because they're impervious to freedom of information requests and public inquiry of all sorts. And so they're ideal. And then when government officials like Wilson and many others retire, where do they go? They go to work for these private contractors, where, as has been told to me, their security clearances usually get better and deeper once they leave federal government and they go work for these contractors. So the real power, the real money, the real intellect are all there. And they're, for the most part, totally protected. I think it was 5-6 years ago, at least, Tom DeLonge put out a tweet. I should find this. I bet one of you can find it. He said, if you really want true breakthroughs on this, you're going to need a legal revolution. And I think he was talking specifically about this type of situation where you've got these private companies that are essentially impervious to our inquiry. And I'm not trying to make them out to be evil. They're just doing what they do. Why would we expect it to be any different? But we don't have to allow this. We can push. And I do know that the members of Congress, some of them, are really looking at this. They're becoming aware, like there is a significant problem to these private contractors who are just above the law. They seem to be. I often call it legal illegality. I think that's what we've got. I don't know how long we're going to do this. If my wife keeps finding more questions, we'll go.
It's tough because it's going so fast. Let's see. Here we have Greedo the Green. Can we get? Oh. Okay. Well, we just have to address this because we just do. Not that you're going to like the answer, but his question is, can we get your opinion on the massive spaceship heading our way? That's a lie, but it's but it's not, but it is. Seems like we get the truth, but then lies as well. And this is how it. Wait, and you've been saying that this is how it would be many years ago. Much love.
All right, I'll try to. Yeah, thank you for that. So,
sorry that it was tough to read.
This I think was from Jeremy Corbell's statement, I'm assuming. Yeah, so in the TMZ thing, I'm in this. So I was shot for this last June, and I'm in the this TMZ thing is on Tubi. You can find it. It's UFO Revolution. So it's season 2. It's 3 episodes. And I just got to say, I haven't seen all of the episodes yet. Even I know I'm in it. I should have seen it by now, but it just came out, and I haven't had a chance to see it. But I do know that Jeremy made a statement that he got information from a source, not described who the source is, that some kind of craft was said to be coming, that we were told a craft would be coming to us, I guess in 2027, is what he said. And Jeremy said that's a lie. They're going to do that, or at least he believes it's a lie. They're going to do that to scare us up into basically going run to daddy, the government, for protection and with the obvious results of more further clampdowns and so forth. I don't know where he got this from, but I will just say I was in conversation with someone earlier today who indicated that there is an intelligence officer, I don't know who this person is, who has said that this is the case. And he has apparently told a few people that this is so. And one of them was Jeremy. It's hard for me to say much more about this because I don't know any more detail about this. I will say that, think about this. Why should we be freaking out over some craft that's supposedly on its way? If you study this phenomenon, you will know there are craft literally around this planet every single day doing things. They are here already. And also, I'll just point out that we know of a number of examples where NORAD was able to track objects coming in from deep space to Earth orbit. If you read one of my books, volume 2 of UFOs in the National Security State, I wrote about this. There was a woman named Simone Mendez, who worked with she was U.S. Air Force in the early 1980s. And she, this wasn't really her fault, but she was shown illegal information. In other words, she was shown information that was classified that she was not authorized to see. And she got into a lot of trouble about it. And it wrecked her career and it did a lot of damage to her. However, what she saw was real. I was shown her military papers, and the investigation that was done of her as a result. And what she saw was a NORAD document, or document describing NORAD's tracking of an object coming in from deep space. This is 1982 we're talking here. Coming in from deep space and parking itself in Earth's orbit. Now, what object's going to come in from deep space and park itself in Earth's orbit in 1982? So I think this kind of thing does happen. And I'm going to take a wild guess that it's more than just what happened on that one occasion in 1982. Is it possibly true that there's something coming in that will supposedly arrive here at, I think it's half the speed of light, I was told, or something like that, and is coming in and will be here in a couple of years? I don't know, maybe. They're here all the time. Is this somehow different? Is this like the mothership that's going to do an Independence Day scenario and blow up the White House? I seriously don't think there's going to be anything that's going to tip the scales beyond what we're already dealing with. We are already dealing with a massive presence of some kind of highly advanced other. They're already here. So I really wouldn't get too worked up over whatever this is supposed to be. And it's right now, it's at the point where it's totally vague. Who the hell knows who this source is? I don't know who this guy is. Is it someone that I'm supposed to take seriously? I am not going to let myself lose any sleep over this, and neither should you. That's my opinion.
Okay. Bernardo Vetrano. Hi, I'm from Argentina, South America. What's your take on countries not knowing the UAP reality even now? Do you think anyone in the rest of the Americas knows? Well,
I mean, you're in Argentina. There are definitely people in South America, lots of folks in South America who are very much involved in this. I've had the pleasure to go. I've not been to Argentina, but I've been to Chile and I've been to Brazil. And I think there's a lot of individuals in those areas that seem to be engaged with this subject. It's like with every place. I think what we find is, think about what most people's lives are like. Most people have jobs. They got things to do. They got families to deal with. They got their lives. They got things, and they don't have time to like do the research, to be a fanatic like I am. I'm a fanatic about this. I'm in an unusual position. Most of us are not like that. And so they're not going to know about UFOs. They're not even going to know much about any of the deeper stuff going on in our world aside from UFOs, right? They're very passively going to get their information from whatever sources they get it from, if they even do that. So it's always going to be the case that most people are just going to be kind of out of it. I've got wonderful family. I love them, extended family. And, they don't really know much about this subject. They think it's great that I go out and I do this. They think it's cool, but they don't really know. Very few of them follow this. And I think that's probably true wherever you go. So that's just the reality. But what's also true with any kind of public issue is that there's always going to be a vocal minority that gets things done. And we're in a unique position with this subject because, more than 10 years ago, I remember so many times talking to other researchers, going to live events, and just thinking, are we going to be doing this, spinning our wheels like this forever with no change? Because really nothing seemed to change. From 2000, 2001, when I started, to up to really 2015, 2016, 2017, it didn't really seem like a whole lot was changing. It was more of the same old story. And it's not quite that way anymore. Now, we've gone to a new level. And the real question is, are we going to go from this level to another level, or are we going to be stuck here for a while? And that I don't know. How long can the establishment play good defense on this? Maybe for a while. And then, think about this. There's a lot of other things going on in the world than just UFOs. There are constant fears of a financial meltdown that could happen. And indeed, it could. If you really look at the US budget, the Western economies are not doing well. Europe is tanking. There's social unrest spreading in many regions of the world. Wars can get worse before they get better. New wars can break out. There's a lot of things, in other words, that can derail genuine information on the UFO subject from coming out. We may be distracted by other things. It's entirely possible. So we might see further breakthroughs. It is not impossible. Or we might be in a stasis. I wouldn't want to be surprised by the ability of that establishment that we are dealing with to keep playing good defense, to continue to manipulate, whether it's big tech. And yeah, there are some changes that seem to be happening, maybe. But to manage the legacy media and big tech, I don't know. They've done a pretty good job so far. You got anything else over there?
Yeah, forgive me if I missed something because it's hard to read and hear everything you say. But Kent Allison was asking, it's obvious that there is something in it for our governments to keep this quiet. Hence, they do nothing. But why?
Well, from a government's point of view, so look at the United States government. What is to be gained from their perspective by coming clean on the full magnitude of the UFO issue? I like to play a little historical game. Let's rewind the clock and go back to 1947. So you're Harry Truman, you are the president of the United States, and your senior advisors somehow tell you, sir, we have acquired technology that is not from this world. And oh yeah, a couple of bodies as well, right? So you get this heavy duty information. It's laid down on you. And what do? You may very well have an instinct of telling the world. You might think the world really needs to know. And if you think that, your advisors are going to be very quick to say to you, that's a bad idea, because that could be very destabilizing. First of all, there's some really amazing technology. And do we want the Russians to get it? And you'd be like, oh, yeah, right. I don't really think I want the Russians to get it, or other nations that I can't trust, or whatever. And also, you don't know, how is the world really going to react? They've just gone through the Second World War. That was kind of a big thing, a lot of upheaval. And do we really want to throw this on people before we even know? Do we have something to worry about? Who are these other beings? Do we know their intentions? Do we not know their intentions? There's a lot of unknowns here. And so you could at least imagine a scenario by which Truman and his people would say, all right, we're going to manage this quietly for a little while. Let's learn what we can learn. Meanwhile, your job, you're going to control the media, you're going to control the academic community, you're going to have the technology studied and all of this stuff. And we're going to have our team and we'll reconvene this conversation in a couple of years and decide what we're going to do. That I can imagine. And I think that's probably what they did. But here's the problem with that. At no point historically did they decide that it was a good idea to tell the public. And the deeper and deeper the secret gets, very likely the harder it becomes to tell the truth. I am quite sure that Dr. Hal Puthoff not long ago talked about this. He's been a little more open about this of late. And he did say that at one point he was part of a group that discussed disclosure possibilities. And he said that there was a consensus that among a lot of the people looking into this, that there would even be like legal problems to the effect that some contractors would be upset that other contractors had access to this technology, and that might have gotten them a leg up on other contracts and on technology development and so forth. And indeed, there are probably serious laws on the books in the United States that would make that very difficult. And that's one issue alone. That is just one of many tangled issues that exist that would make a government think, I don't really want to get into this. This is a mess. And it's the great unknown. You don't know where you're going to come out on the other side of this. Is this going to lead to a revolution? Is this going to lead to a loss of confidence in the government? Is this going to lead to some kind of mass panic? Is this going to lead to a transformation of the whole energy paradigm, which, yeah, we could say, well, we want free energy, and it would probably be great economically. It would probably be great. There could be tremendous benefits to it, but it's a huge change. And any kind of radical change is going to be frightening to any group that's in power. I think just naturally speaking, they're going to be very cautious about it. And there's probably a lot of other reasons why they are holding back. The thing that I say is, look, I have sympathy to some of this, but my attitude ultimately is it doesn't really matter. Like, I'm on the other side. And the fact is, there are those of us who are going to research this. We are going to do what we can to get the truth out, because that is what we do. You can't stop the human race from going down this path of researching the UFO and ET matter and eventually obtaining some kind of disclosure. It's like try to stop the world from continuing to develop artificial intelligence. Impossible. It is impossible. You cannot do it. And it's the same with this subject. We're on a path. We are on a path that is inevitably going to lead somewhere. It's the disclosure train is going to eventually arrive at its destination. It will. When that will happen, I don't know. But I think we would be very foolish indeed to think that tomorrow is going to look exactly like yesterday. It's not. It's going to look different.
Okay.
That would be a good place to end this, but if you got more, we'll keep going.
I think we should, but I think we should end on also just again letting some people who've just joined know that we don't know when the actual broadcast is going to be released to everybody on the web.
Right.
And why don't we just quickly recap a couple of the things, some of the good things from that broadcast, and some of the weaknesses of the broadcast, and then maybe we'll say goodnight.
Okay, good.
To everybody.
Again, I just want to say, my first statement about the program tonight was that it won't convince an ardent skeptic. I think that stands. I think it won't. It's not enough to do that. But that's not to say that it had no value. I would say it did have value and does. And I'm glad that NewsNation did it. I'm glad that Ross interviewed Jake Barber. I think that Jake Barber carried himself very well in his interview. He came across as, I think, to me, very credible, believable. I will say I personally believe that he's telling the truth. And He had a lot of support from colleagues, and I'm glad that Ross was able to get them on camera too. What we're left with was Jake Barber's very strong conviction that he transported, at least on a couple of occasions, non-human technology. And I'm willing to trust his judgment on that. But it must be said, he did not really offer proof. There was interesting video, and we did see an egg-shaped object being transported on video. I showed a screenshot of it earlier. I will assume that NewsNation is going to have this available in the very near future.
It looks like it's up. If people go to NewsNation on YouTube,
Good,
it
there you
looks
go.
like you can be notified. It'll go up tomorrow at noon. That's how it looks.
Tomorrow at noon Eastern
Yeah,
time. We're in
yeah.
Eastern. Okay, so it will be available tomorrow, most likely. So
Oh wait, sorry.
unless it's available now.
I don't know if they're saying midnight tonight.
All right.
Possibly.
Well, soon.
Yeah.
So just go to the NewsNation YouTube channel, and at some point you will see it. My point is that the video was interesting, and it did show an unusual looking object. I showed a screenshot of it here. And I'm certainly willing to accept that Jake Barber is probably accurate and justified in his belief that it was non-human intelligence. Yeah, but it's not proof. It's just not going to cut it as proof, particularly to a skeptic. It's just, I can't see it working. However, there were some really interesting nuances that came out in the program. The kind of mental connection that he talked about, I think, is significant. The fact that there is this kind of secret war over these Panasonic tough books. What is in those things that's worth shooting and killing over? He strongly believed this was part of an ET, like there was ET intelligence somehow that we had collected that was valuable in those Panasonic tough books. And by the way, there are rumors, which I would not discount, over shootouts having occurred in the past over UFO crash retrievals between private contractors and U.S. government personnel. It's a rumor, supposedly happened in the early 2000s. I don't think that that should be dismissed out of hand. I think that there may be something to it, but again, we need more information on it. So the point is that this program gave reason to believe that there is a secret conflict, secret war, or secret struggles going on over this technology. And is that really so difficult to believe? That seems quite reasonable to me. So that came out a bit in this program. So I think there's information to build on with what came out, and I have no doubt, whether on Reddit or other feeds or other sites out there, that there are going to be a lot of discussion and arguments and people going back and forth, but there may end up being some pretty good research that comes out of it as well. And I'm looking forward to that as well. And I'm looking forward to talking to my own sources. I've got a couple, and getting some follow-up on this. And if I learn anything significant, I can assure you, I will tell you. I don't have any skin in the game one way or the other. And I want to find out one thing only, and that is what is true. That's it. I just want to know what is true. And when I find something that I think is true, I am here to tell you that as well. So that's what I can say. And is that everything?
I think we're going to wrap it
I
up.
think we should wrap it up there.
I just want to come in again and thank everybody, everybody who was here. Thank you for all the super chats. I'm sorry that we weren't able to thank you all individually. So I want to thank you now. Thank you, everyone, for your support, just being here. You're supporting independent research. And I want to thank the members of our website and the YouTube members. And again, everyone who is here, you are supporting, and we appreciate you all. So
thank you for coming on and saying that.
Just wanted to say hi and want to say goodnight to everyone. We appreciate you. And yep, we're all looking for the truth, no matter where it takes us. And we'll keep pushing on.
We will. Yeah, we will. And I've been trying to be a little more active on YouTube of late, and I hope to be able to keep that going. Keep in mind, I don't just do YouTube. I try to write books, and I'm just finishing a 3-volume, it's about 1,200 pages of writing of the history of USOs. So this is under unidentified submerged objects. And the first volume is polished and done and illustrated. All the writing's there. I just compiled the index, finished the acknowledgments. That book's going to be ready to go anytime now. And the subsequent second and third volumes will be out. All of it, I think, will be out before the end of the first half of this year. So all the cases are written up. It'll be a matter of formatting the chapters and all of that other stuff, but that's much easier than everything that I've done so far. So in addition to doing YouTube, I do that and then run the website over at Richard Dolan Members. Great community there. So it's tough for me to do a lot of YouTube videos. And but I do think it's probably a good idea for me to do a little bit more in the future. So I'm going to try. And there's certainly no shortage of things to talk about in this field of ours. So I'm sure I'll be here more and more in the future. As Tracy said, I want to just second that. I really want to thank all of you for your support here today. This was actually really engaging to doing this with you and your support all along. It's the only way that I'm able to do this full time. I work on the UFO subject full time. It is all that I do. It's the only thing that I do. And honestly, no one could do this without support from a community like yourself. So thank you for that. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. And the only thing that I can promise, I can't promise predictions. I can't promise disclosure. I can't promise a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. I can't promise any of that, but I can promise that I will do my very best at all times to be honest and to do my best analysis that I can at any given moment, and to keep looking after what is true, and to relay that to you the best I can. And let's do the ride together. Let's do the journey together. I mean, I am amazed at this point in my life. I turn around and I'm like, there are actually people who want to go on this journey with me, so that we can delve into one of the most amazing subjects of all time, which is that of UFOs or UAP. It's an incredible subject, and we get to do that together. I get to do that with you. So thank you for joining me on this journey. And with that, I guess I will, I'll bid you good night. And if any of the producers are watching, Sean or Michael, if you're there, I just want to say thank you to everyone. We will keep fighting the good fight. I will probably be back soon. And I will thank you for your time and just say later.